I die because I belong to a coward. The last words of Thérésa Tallien, the woman who once stopped the guillotine in a damp prison cell in Paris. An 18-year-old girl pressed a trembling hand to the bars. She had once danced at royal salons wrapped in diamonds and laughter, and now rats and whispers were her only company. On a scrap of paper, she wrote one sentence that would change France itself. Meurs, parce, parsians en lâche. I die because I belong to a coward. Her name was Thérésa Cabarrus, later known to all as Madame Tallien, the woman who tamed the terror, bewitched Napoleon, and turned survival into an art form. Thérésa was born into privilege, the daughter of a Spanish nobleman serving in France. By 14, she was already admired for her beauty and wit. She loved a young financier, Alexandre Laborde, with the fierce certainty only first love knows. But her father had other plans. To punish his enemies, he married her off to Marquis de Fontenay, old, cold, and powerful. At 15, she became a wife to a man she could barely look at. At 16, she gave birth to a child who, according to gossip, was not his. By 17, just trapped in a loveless marriage as the storm of the revolution began to darken the horizon, when heads began to fall and fear ruled the streets, Thérésa filed for divorce, one of the first women in France to do so. But instead of freedom, she found chains. Her ex-husband fled abroad. She was arrested. The girl who had dreamed of Versailles now awaited the guillotine. In prison, her beauty became both curse and salvation. One man noticed her through the iron bars. June Lambert Tallien, a powerful official of the National Convention. He visited her cell, spoke softly, promised protection. Against all odds, he fell in love. He saved her once. But love in the age of revolution was fragile. When Robespierre, France's bloodthirsty leader, accused Tallien of weakness, Thérésa was thrown back into prison again. Dragged from cell to cell, she met another woman awaiting her fate, Josephine de Beauharnais. Both would survive. Both would later shape the destiny of men who would rule the world as executions filled the squares. Thérésa wrote her lover that single, burning line, "I die because I belong to a coward." It reached him like a thunderclap. In that moment, Tallien did the unthinkable. He turned against Robespierre. Within days, the dictator was overthrown, and the reign of terror collapsed. France exhaled, and Thérésa walked free. Paris celebrated her not as a victim, but as a goddess reborn. They called her Our Lady of Thermidor. She wore silk instead of blood, laughter instead of fear. When she married Tallien, it seemed a fairy tale ending. Beauty and hero united after saving a nation. But fairy tales fade faster than revolutions. Tallien's power crumbled. Thérésa's gratitude turned to boredom. She loved him as long as he was strong, and when he wasn't, she left. The salons buzzed again, this time with her name linked to another, Napoleon Bonaparte. She fascinated him until she introduced him to Josephine. Even that match, history says, was her idea. After divorcing Tallien, Thérésa moved through high society like fire through silk. She became the mistress of the banker Gabriel Ovred, bore him 4 children, and lived as if destiny had owed her joy for every horror she had endured. When Overod hesitated to marry her, she simply turned the page. At 32, she wed Count de Caraman, a nobleman who adored her strength as much as her beauty. 2 more sons followed. Her days of prisons and guillotines were long gone, but the woman who had written that letter from the cell was never entirely free. Behind the jewels, the laughter, and the legend lived a heart that had once stared death in the eyes and learned to smile back. Thérésa Tallien was more than a courtesan. She was a survivor who stopped a tyrant with a single sentence. She lived through a revolution that devoured kings, lovers, and ideals, and still managed to keep her head, her charm, and her will. Her story isn't about beauty. It's about the price of courage and the loneliness of women who dare to love powerful men. Hit if you believe that sometimes one sentence can change the fate of an entire country.